Thank you for joining us. You're listening to the St. John's Farmers Market Radio Almanac. This is a show about business and market culture in and around St. John's, Newfoundland. This program is produced and recorded at CHMR FM 93.5 FM in St. John's, Newfoundland and Labrador, and is aired on other great stations in the province and elsewhere in the country. It can also be heard online at www.chmr.ca. I'm your host, Matthew Ledrew, owner and operator at Engine Books, the province's fastest growing independent publisher of books.
Okay, thank you for joining me for another very special episode of the St. John's Farmers Market Radio Almanac on CHMR. We are here today with a very, very special guest. We have Theresa Murphy on, the artist behind Hibernating Fox Studios, a wonderful, wonderful artist that you have seen at the farmers market every so often, whenever she is not working with the farmers markets. Thank you for joining me, Theresa.
Thank you for having me.
No worries, no worries at all. Tell me about your art. You're one of the first vendors I ever met at this. I was at a non-SJFM event, and I was very attracted to your art that you do. This
Oh,
very
thank you.
line on paper with some water acrylics, but I don't know. I'm not an artist, so that's might be completely incorrect. Please just tell me about your art a little bit.
Yeah, so I work with a variety of different mediums. I can't really stick to one thing. Um, so I've always been drawing since I was a kid. So I do work in graphite and ink. I've also been doing watercolor painting, and then in 2018, I fell in love with printmaking. So lino cut relief printmaking and dry point etchings are some of my favorites right now.
Nice, nice, nice. What's lino cut? Explain this to me, because
Yes.
pretend I'm dumb, because I am.
No,
Sure, I learned it in
it's
school, but
yeah, that's a fair point. Some people might be familiar with woodcut, and it's very similar to that, just the substrate or the material you use is different. So back in, say, the 70s, it may have actually been lino, like linoleum on the floor. These days it's made of like natural fibers that are I guess compressed together, and you carve into that the relief and the negative image of the image you want to print. And then when you roll that with ink and run it through a printing press, it'll transfer the image for you. And then you can get, as you re-roll it with more ink, you can get multiple prints off um, the one block that you carve. So it's similar to, like, if you're familiar with Graham Blair, he does woodcuts, very beautiful woodcuts. So he carves into actual hard wood and uses that as his block.
that's interesting. So wait, so linocut used to be linoleum, and now it's not. Can anyone get away with that? Like, can Graham just be like, you know what? I'm not going to use wood anymore. I'm going to use styrofoam and still call it woodcuts. Like, how dare you call it linocut?
So it would still be relief printmaking, actually, because as opposed to applying the paint of a painting with lino cut or any kind of relief printmaking, you're carving away the negative space around the image that you want to then be printed. So when I actually did a workshop with a local printmaker, Anita Singh, down at the Anna Templeton Center, and one of the introductory ways she uses to teach people about relief printmaking is using foam. So you are actually not far off in your in your guess there. You can actually use a dull pencil, make an indentation in a little piece of foam.
Yep.
You won't be able to reuse it very much, because once you start compressing it, it'll not keep its integrity. But yeah, there's lots of ways you can achieve that effect for sure.
Soap is also one that I've done, like a bar of soap I've done with.
Oh yes.
I'm in awe of people who can do that at any level. The kind of retract or deduction art, where it's like you're taking away like all any art I've ever done has been additive, where like, oh, I'm adding graphite to this piece of paper and doing
Yeah.
something with it. Like I tried sculpting a few times, and just like the act of like trying to like take away and find the image underneath, I could not
Yeah.
do it. My brain doesn't work that way.
Yeah, it definitely takes a shift of your brain for sure. And to take it a step further, if you start trying to add in multiple colors, then you either have to use multiple different blocks, a block for each separate color you print, and then layer them on top. Or another method that I've recently done a workshop with local printmaker Christine Koch is reduction lino print. So you have one block for your whole print, and each time you print a new color, you carve away and basically destroy your block so that what you leave is the next color, and you just keep layering them until you're done. And at the end, there's no block left. You've kind of, it's a one and done kind of deal.
That that doesn't sound the most time. That doesn't sound. What's the word I'm looking for here, Theresa? That
it
doesn't sound chronologically sound. That is what is.
So it definitely has its pros and cons. And one of the big pros is, and this is getting probably way too technical for a radio
Nope,
show, but
nope.
so if you're printing multiple colors, if you use a different block for every color, you have to be very, very specific about your registration. And what that means is lining up the block to the image so that when you print it, if it's askew at all, it'll look like a 3D, you know, blue and red kind of image. Like things will be slightly off. Like when you get a
That
comic
sounds
from the
wonderful.
newspaper and
Yeah.
the colors are kind of off and you can't read the comic, you're going dizzy.
Yeah.
So with the reduction block, that kind of eliminates the issue of using multiple blocks because it's just all on the one. So you just have to line it up, and yeah, it will all match up. But it kind of also helps with the anxiety of trying to make something perfect, in that you don't really have more things to work on and fiddle with. And like you're doing that one project, and then once it's all printed and carved, that's it. Like you've made the thing and you can move on. Whereas some of us creative types kind of can dwell and keep working, and you could keep picking at something, you know, for eternity, really.
Yeah. That's interesting. I'm familiar with the registration from Papercraft. My wife does a lot of uses the cry cut to do stuff. So you've got to have the
Oh yeah.
registration so it all lines up after the fact and stuff like that.
Mm.
I maybe this is a dumb solution, or but like my option would be to basically do what you're talking about with the newspaper. And maybe this is like, oh, it's not linograph then or something like that, but I would have the color already on the page and then stamp the black and white on over it. Or is that insane?
Yeah, so I think we're talking about the same thing.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just a matter of how you do the registration. So like you would do however many you wanted your edition to be, you would print 30 of whatever the first layer of the color is. And then once that's dry and you've carved your block for the second color, then you would put down the print. Well, usually you put down the block and then the print on top, and you would line it up. So sometimes you can have kind of like a registration jig underneath that would kind of have measurements and stuff on it, and you line it up. But you can also get little like tabs and pins that help you match up your print to the block every time, kind of thing.
Nice. I love
Yeah.
the imperfections that come from that kind of stuff. I know you're talking about you want it to be perfect, but there's something about the like just slightly offness that's like, oh
Yes,
yes.
the handmade character and all the little happy accidents that can come with like the static and texture of working with a hand carved block. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Okay, I've got to ask, how did we come up with hibernating fox? What kind of insane name for a studio slash business is it? Because it's interesting because you're a single artist, as in like it's just you at the table. So I mean, like
Mhm.
the name Theresa Murphy Art is right there. Like, what made you go with Hibernating Fox?
So from a business perspective, it's a bit more memorable, I think, than so and so name artist. So for Hibernating Fox Studios, it kind of has two connections, one being my dog and one being uh, the reclusive and cyclical nature of art making.
Ah,
Um, yeah, so my dog Foxy is a beagle mix, and she's red in color with white patches. So the rescue group called her Foxy and kept the name. Um, and when she curls up to nap and puts her little tail over her nose, she looks like that kind of classic woodland fox in a den
the one that's on
image.
your image. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. And then the hibernating, so um, yeah, just the nature of being kind of an introverted maker or creative who's doing it in their spare time or like around their full-time job. And especially with printmaking, like anything that's handmade, the time that has to go into it before you kind of emerge with your new finished item, just the kind of like cyclical nature of that, where there's a lot happening behind the scenes people probably don't see until you do emerge with that final finished image that comes out.
Okay, okay, okay. That
Yeah, I've
makes
had
a degree of sense. Do you think foxes are doing art when they're hibernating, or any animals?
we don't know, and you can't prove otherwise.
I just picture like a fox or a bear in their cave, and they've got this little like a beret on sideways, and they're
Mhm.
like, "What's like? This is my winter period."
Yep, just finding the natural pigments that are around the forest and using those.
Yeah,
It is a bit of a scientific misnomer. Foxes, I don't believe they actually do hibernate, but they
I
do.
just looked it up, and they do briefly. Yeah,
Oh, there we go. Yeah.
yeah,
I wouldn't
yeah.
want to be spreading like false science or anything.
It did not say no conclusively. It was like they do something that's like hibernating, but it's not like the hardcore hibernation that some of the other
Yeah.
animals do. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
But yeah, but it's like it. Like I googled it, and the top article was like, "You're not wrong, but no." Like, you know what I mean? Like, so it's like on the it was kind of like I feel like the article was being very sad. The article was like rubbing its temples and going like, "Do humans hibernate? I mean, yes, kind of. If you want to
Some of
be
us
that
more than
way,
others.
yeah,
Mm.
yeah. Okay, so what's I love some of the art that you do. I love the cards, especially that you do, and some
Oh,
of
thank you.
the portraits. I don't know if portrait's the right word of some real life people that you do. Although I will admit I wasn't familiar with the real life people before you did them. I feel like
Oh,
you're
yes,
into a different area than I am, kind of thing. Um,
yeah.
which is always fun and always interesting, kind of thing. Learning when I'm going to your booth and finding stuff. How do you choose what you're going to do? Because I feel like there's a very eclectic um
Mhm.
yeah, very eclectic array of things at your booth. I've got a few friends that are like I've got a friend, Alicia Morrissey. She's a copy director at Rogue Penguin, but she's an artist in her freelance time as well. And right now she's in what I'm calling her skull period, where she
Mm. Mhm.
discovered a bunch of human skulls, some like at a sale, and is now making a lot. Like she's got a ton of paper mache of them. Like she took a cast mold of them
Oh, neat.
and is painting on the paper mache, like so doing so like doing flowers on it, doing them with this, doing them with
Mm.
that. It's just full of skulls. Her home, just this is her skull period, and it's not like she's even showing them anywhere. I'm like, what you doing? But yeah, that's yeah, that's where we're at. Graham Blair has a certain look to some stuff. He'll be inspired by
Mm.
folklore sometimes and go through a period, and another time it'll be the crows, and another time it'll be like certain animals and stuff like this. The tarot cards. He goes through periods. How do you like, with your stuff? It seems like very like what like I can't identify it into periods. It's very much like he wanted to
I
draw that.
know.
There she goes.
I
There she went.
know.
Which is nothing wrong with that. But how do you decide what you're going to work on?
uh yeah, like I definitely don't have any sort of cohesive theme or even style to my art. That's for sure. Um yeah, so inspirational just kind of come from things at random, and I keep a memo note in my phone when I come up with ideas. And unfortunately, I'm not as good at following up on them as oh, that's blurred out. You can't see. I'm not as good as following up on actually putting them down as I am just writing the idea. But when I was a kid, I would take like a regular ruled line notebook and just put a different word at the top. And then I would design an entire superhero based on that one word and like costume and everything. And I would have notebooks, loosely binders full of just these different superheroes
Sounds amazing.
based on. Yeah, so I think that
Where
kind of carried over to what I do now. Sometimes it'll be a bit more nuanced than that. Like it'll be an idea or a concept that I'll try to put through, and sometimes it'll just be still life of flowers. But yeah, I've got lots of stuff. I should one day just start trying to make some of these.
where are these superheroes? Why can't I buy these superheroes?
They were drawn by an 8-year-old, and they're probably in my parents' basement somewhere.
I don't see the problem. Okay, side tangent. Side tangent.
Mm.
One of my heroes from the comic book industry is a man named Jim Shooter, who was editor in chief of Marvel Comics during one of the best eras of Marvel Comics in the 80s when they were most like socially relevant and just doing good stuff. And a lot of the great, like the golden age of like, after Stan Lee, but before things got too commercial, like that era that you think of if you're a Marvel Comics fan, Jim Shooter was in charge of all that. He's the one who
Okay.
created Secret Wars and all that. He started in comics to make money for his family because his father was no longer with us. He started in comics when he was 7
Oh my
years
goodness.
old. Like he was writing, it was the 30s, and there weren't rules with regard to child labor laws. So he was a
Mm.
7-year-old that DC Comics hired to write Legion of Superheroes, and they were like, how do we appeal to kids? I know, let's hire a kid to write it. And that's why all the Legion of Superheroes, like your superheroes reminded me of this, have the weirdest things where it's like hindsight lad, bounce boy, because he was 7. He would just be like toaster girl, like that's all the
Yeah,
Legion of
yeah,
Superheroes. Object, gender. Object, gender. That's it.
yeah.
Yep.
That's awesome.
Elastic Man, like just that over and over. That's really interesting about the superhero stuff. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So how do you decide now what you're doing? I interrupted you. I'm so sorry.
No, not at all. Sometimes it comes along just from the sheer pressure of having a deadline, however arbitrary that is.
You have
So just
deadlines.
sometimes, so like with the one you're probably thinking of, the Chrissy Teigen one, I did that one for the Feminisms Reframed art show that was
Oh,
back in 2019. I don't think it's happened since. That was organized by Zarin Healy White and a few other individuals.
gotcha.
But yeah, so for that one, you had to have like your application in with a concept by a certain date, and then you had to submit the actual finished object by a certain date for them to include it in the gallery. So
Oh, that makes sense.
I
I wasn't trying to be derisive. I guess I'm just don't know this world kind of thing. Like I'm thinking of a deadline, like in the same way that when I'm writing a book that isn't no one knows about yet. I'm just working on it for my art, and maybe it'll be something someday. And so it's like when I say, "Ooh, I've got a deadline," that's very self-imposed. That's like I would like to get 2,000 words out today.
Yeah,
Like,
and there's lots of those too, for sure. And then like also like I try to participate in local workshops. So like as opposed to being like I never went to art school. And I'm kind of self-taught, but I also kind of say I'm community taught
yep.
because there's so many artists out there who are willing to like share and explain how they do things and are like excited to like bring other people in, especially at like St. Michael's print shop where I've been doing workshops. So that kind of also puts a self-imposed deadline on things. Like I signed up and committed for this workshop. So I have to just sit down and see what comes out and commit to one of those things to make and have finished by the end of the workshop kind of thing.
Excellent, excellent, excellent.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. And art school, you're likely better off for that because you can kind of seek out the specific, like, I would like to learn this or I need this skill set kind of thing, because it's not like artist is one of those things where if you apply for a job, air quotes, as an
Mhm.
artist, they're going to check your credentials. You know what I mean? They're not gonna be like, oh, but you didn't graduate from X or
Mhm.
whatever like that. It's like like I have an English degree now,
Mhm.
and did creative writing at MUN, but I was already a writer, a published writer before I did that. Like it's not like you
Yeah,
need the paper in order to do the art.
exactly. So like for a writer, you would have like where have you been published? And with an artist, it's like where have you exhibited? Or like do you participate in markets or fairs? And just your involvement in that kind of community would be on the CV as much as any kind of formal education would.
I would not make a good artist. I've decided I would be one of those like shock and awe artists kind of thing, like one of those like, I know I'm gonna pull an elaborate prank and film it and that is the art, or
Like putting a urinal upside down or having a Banksy go through a shredder at auction, something like that.
I was thinking even worse, honestly. I was like, I was going like
Banana duct tape to a wall.
no, take a bunch of secret photos of someone and then like invite them to an art show, and the art show is the photos of them, but at the same time I'm taking pictures of their shocked, horrified expression, and then that's the art, is them realizing that they
Okay.
were being watched kind of thing. Like I don't actually use the photos, I took it and then I get the permission after the fact or something insane like that.
Yeah, you're
Yeah,
on the
yeah,
boundaries of consent there a little bit.
exactly,
Yeah.
that's what I'm talking about. That's where the art is, which is why I shouldn't do it.
Is this indicative of your writing at all?
Yes, absolutely. 100%. 100%.
Oh dear.
Um, yeah, absolutely. Um, but yeah, that's super great. By the way, in my head, I try to never say it in person, but in my head, your name is Theresa Murphy,
Mhm.
because I'm insane.
There, there's a Murphy. Yeah.
Yeah, there is a Mercy. Yeah, 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 yeah. So I'm trying hard not to say that on the air right now. Theresa Murphy of
Mhm.
Hibernating Fox Studios. Who inspired you to start your business, if anyone did?
Mm, I would say um, there were a lot of friends of mine who kind of got on that bandwagon of um, the hustle. So it kind of seemed like around that time, everyone started having creative pursuits that they would bring to markets and do. And I was attending those as a customer, um, and was also feeling unsatisfied in my job because and I realized that was in part because I hadn't been pursuing art myself. So there was this great span of time between university and my 30s when I wasn't really making art. And it got to a point where that was very apparent in my unhappiness. So I kind of people like Malene LeDrew, Whitney Layla Designs, um, Jennifer, who does Lucky Penny. like these friends of mine who are just taking themselves and going out there and just putting themselves out there and selling their product. And yeah, it kind of gave me the confidence to try it out. Like if I had done this one printmaking workshop in 2018, and that inspired me to try printmaking on my own. And then after a day of printing, the next morning, my kitchen was just full of all these prints. So it was like, well, I don't need 30 of these prints. So I just put it online. Hey, is anyone interested in one of these? And then it just kind of took off from there. Like it was something that I made that people actually enjoyed and were interested in having as part of their lives. So yeah, that kind of became addicting and validating.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
And just inspired me to keep creating. So then I started doing markets, and as you know from doing markets, just all the stories you hear of people coming to that point in their lives, deciding that they wanted to start doing markets, and whatever past iterations of their life they had, different jobs or what have you, and then they're still following this passion, like weekend warrior kind of thing. And yeah, just encouraged me to keep going and doing it.
Nice.
Yeah.
I like it a lot. Theresa Murphy, this is a very serious question. Okay, I will accept none of your silliness with regard to this question. Okay.
I will gird my loins.
Okay. All right. If you were a jam, what kind of flavor of jam would you be and why?
Hard-hitting questions here.
Yeah.
So the jam I would be is not necessarily my favorite jam, and Sarah might have fun with psychoanalyzing that statement. I think I'm gonna go with a ginger marmalade.
A ginger marmalade. Okay.
Yes. So my mom makes an incredible ham on Christmas Eve that uses a ginger marmalade glaze.
Okay.
And it gets all nice and like crusty around the edges where it's been like seared. It's like slow cooked ham. So normally marmalade is not something I would gravitate to like at the grocery store. I would kind of overlook it in favor of like a raspberry jam, or like the Jam Lady's Jumbleberry is my jam. But yeah, the marmalade, like it's there and you're gonna like it. And then the ginger is just something a little unexpected in it. Yeah. Little bite there.
I take exception to marmalade not being something you gravitate towards. Marmalade
that is definitely my
thing.
assumption. That is definitely my assumption. I apologize. Yeah.
Marmalade is amazing. Also, okay, so your mom uses this as a glaze. I feel like there is like more and more. I feel like that whole like, oh, everything is cake, like that trend going on. I feel like there is a secret trend going on where everything is glaze. I feel like cooks are daring themselves. You know what could be a glaze on this ham? Chocolate, Nestle Quick, coffee grounds, old newspaper, just whatever. Anything can be a glaze. I'm like, what's
caramelization makes everything so much better. It's just
part of me is like, what was wrong with the chicken or the ham? What was wrong with it before this? This is like why does Oreos need so many flavors-ness of it? Like Kit Kat flavored Oreos. Shut up. If I wanted a Kit Kat, I would have a Kit Kat. Dear God Almighty. Birthday cake Oreos. It's not your birthday.
Don't talk to the Japanese about Kit Kat flavors, because there's a lot.
Okay. All right.
You might want to Google that one.
Oh dear. Oh dear. Oh dear. I mean, Kit Kat, you can have multiple flavors because Kit Kat are essentially flavorless.
Oh yeah, cookie wafer with chocolate on
it. Yeah.
But I'm talking like shrimp Kit Kat, wasabi Kit Kat. Yeah.
Why? Why?
They can.
All right, well, thank you for coming on again. For all of you listening, we'll be here the same time next week to talk more about business culture in St. John's, Newfoundland and Labrador. Be sure to drop by and visit our guests and all the other vendors at the St. John's Farmers Market this week.